Some years ago, there was considerable publicity in the press devoted to monkey glands for restoring youth to elderly men. By implanting into their bodies the vigorous sex glands of young monkeys, old men sought to rejuvenate themselves and regain the powers of youth. However, this new fountain of youth proved to be as chimerical as that which Ponce de Leon sought to discover in Florida, for after a brief period of stimulated sexual power, relapsed to their former condition, as sexually exhausted as ever. The implanted glands soon became worn out and lost their power. According to Dr. Sokolov, they became affected by the general condition of auto-intoxication that caused the sexual glands to decline in the first place, accompanied by general endocrine degeneration, which is the cause of old age. The remarkable researches of the Austrian physiologist, Professor Eugene Steinach, showed that it was not necessary to implant the glands of young monkeys into the bodies of old men to restore their youth, as Dr. Voronov attempted, for by a simple operation involving the tying up of the duct through which the testicular secretions must pass in order to be discharged, thereby making their complete and total conservation and resorption into the circulation compulsory, Steinach was able to cause animals and men to lose the signs of old age and to regain the appearance of vigor and youth. Professor Steinach, furthermore, proved that, through conservation in the body of testicular secretions and their resorption into the circulation, the blood becomes enriched with sex hormones, and this increased concentration of sex hormones in the blood is responsible for the restoration of youth and the regeneration of sexual vigor. In the case of rats, Steinach observed a regeneration of all the endocrine glands, a new growth of soft, glossy hair, characteristic of that of a young animal, and an actual regeneration of various tissues in the body, principally heart and brain tissues, was observed in many cases. The same results may be achieved, however, without need of any operation, by the simple practice of continence, or conservation of seminal fluid, avoiding both voluntary and involuntary losses. Since the semen contains sex hormones, by conserving it rather than wasting it through sexual indulgence, these valuable hormones are saved and resorbed into the circulation, where they act as general physiological catalysts and endocrine activators, exercising a revitalizing effect on all cells of body and brain. It is said that an ounce of semen is equivalent to 40 ounces of blood, from which it's made. The seminal fluid represents a high concentration of some of the most valuable constituents of the blood, especially lecithin, phosphorus, calcium, iron, nucleoproteins, etc. With every seminal discharge, the body loses its most valuable chemical constituents, highly important for the nutrition of nerve and brain tissues. Not only is the body drained of vitality, but the brain is especially weakened by the loss of lecithin, a brain food, involved in every seminal emission. This explains why it has such a weakening effect on the nerves, whose myelin sheaths are composed largely of lecithin, as are all nerve and brain cells. Woman also loses her vital substance with each sexual act. This explains the short lives of the wives of passionate men and of prostitutes. The sexual glands extract from the blood its very finest ingredients, especially lecithin and other phosphorus compounds, as well as considerable calcium. The seminiferous tubules of the testicle extract separate these substances from the blood which passes through the gland, forming testicular secretion, which then passes up the vas deferens to the seminal vesicles, or abdominal sacs, in which they are stored. Now, it is a common but false idea that after the testicular secretions reach the seminal vesicles, they must be voided through either voluntary or involuntary emissions. That this idea is erroneous is proven by the many cases of individuals who remain continent for long periods of time, even years, without either voluntary or involuntary emissions. The common idea that if the semen is not emitted from the seminal vesicles voluntarily, it must find vicarious release involuntarily, is entirely false, since the seminal vesicles are surrounded by absorptive lymphatics, which draw up the secretions within the seminal vesicles and carry them up to the receptacellum chyli, a lymphatic receptacle in the abdomen, from where the resorbed seminal secretions pass up, through the thoracic duct, into the left subclavian vein prior to its entrance to the heart. In this way, seminal fluid that is not externally discharged passes into the circulation. One writer said, quote, "When the lymphatic system is filled with transformed vital fluids, we feel truly alive. This water of life fills the body with physical vitality and generates an abundance of the electric and magnetic forces that thrill the nerves with spiritual energy. The organs are fed with so much of the good life substance that they all rejoice in their duties and work so harmoniously that perfect health is realized in every part. The brain is fed with the subtle essences, which are transformed into thought force, and the mind is clear and brilliant, with a thought-creating power above the ordinary. Thus, we see that the greater part of the physical and mental strength is derived from the conservation of sex life. It inspires to joyous activity in every line of work, and gives that feeling of self-completeness and satisfaction that brings serenity and security of mind. The lymphatics reabsorb the vital essences that are not expanded, and return them to the blood, by which they are redistributed to the various physical organs. The organs of sex have other uses in the human economy than selfish gratification or the propagation of offspring. There can be no great development of spirituality until it's understood that the conservation of the sex fluid furnishes the essences from which the nerves and brain are nourished." Unquote. This is lecithin, a phosphorized fat, which is a chief constituent of brain and nerve tissues, and also of the semen, which has a similar chemical composition. That is why loss of semen deprives the nerves and brain of their most essential constituent, lecithin, while conservation of semen increases the amounts of lecithin in the blood available for nerve and brain nutrition. That is why most great geniuses, like Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Leonardo da Vinci, Spinoza, Newton, Beethoven, Spencer, etc., led continent lives. They conserved their seminal lecithin, which was converted into brain lecithin, providing their brains with optimal phosphoric nutrition, on which brain activity so greatly depends.